A 30-year-old Canadian woman named Sabrina Calder is accused of killing 3 people over a several-day span. Described by a police spokesman as a serial killer by definition, she reportedly began her crime spree by murdering a Toronto woman in her 60s inside the victim's home. The following day, emergency responders were called to a public park in Niagara Falls, where they found 47-year-old Lance Cunningham suffering from fatal injuries. He was pronounced dead at the scene. The day after that, a 77-year-old retired teacher named Mario Bilic was found with stab wounds in a Hamilton, Ontario parking lot. He succumbed to his injuries at a nearby hospital. Calder was subsequently linked to the homicides and was charged in connection with all 3 cases. The first victim was known to the suspects, while Cunningham and Bilic appeared to have been targeted at random. The accused killer faces second-degree murder charges for the first 2 killings and a first-degree murder charge for the 3rd homicide. Number 14. Shannon Rita. A year after she was reported missing from the Seattle, Washington area, the body of 37-year-old Shannon Rita was found stuffed in a suitcase at one of the city's homeless encampments. The discovery was made while police were clearing out the camp during a raid in the days following a shooting, and they suspect that Rita may have been murdered. Shortly after Rita vanished, her friends searched for her with no success. She's been described as an upstanding member of her community, leaving law enforcement puzzled as to how she ended up dead and in such an unlikely environment. Investigators are reportedly piecing together a timeline of the woman's last known movements in hopes of answering the lingering questions surrounding her untimely demise. Rita wasn't known to live at the camp, and even though she isn't the first person who's been found dead at the encampment, she's the only individual who appears to have died under suspicious circumstances within the makeshift community. Authorities have appealed to the public for help resolving the case. Number 13. Allison Sharden. During a staycation in Blaine, Minnesota, with her husband and children, a 39-year-old mother of 2 named Allison Sharden engaged in inappropriate conduct with a pair of teenage hockey players who were in town from Colorado with their team. She reportedly spotted the 2 victims in the hotel's hot tub and started a conversation with them. According to a criminal complaint, Sharden's husband threatened to end their marriage if she didn't get out of the hot tub and come to their hotel room. She heeded her husband's caution, but not before collecting the boys' contact information. Later that night, after arguing with her spouse, she went to the teens' hotel room and pressured them into participating in illicit acts while a 3rd individual watched. One of the victims later told police that he wanted to say no, but that he felt stuck in the moment, while another victim described Sharden as creepy and accused her of following him and his friends. Sharden pleaded guilty to criminal charges relating to her misconduct in exchange for a maximum 8-month jail sentence and is now a registered predatory offender. Number 12. Brad Simpson. 53-year-old Brad Simpson and his wife of 22 years, 51-year-old Suzanne Simpson, got into a heated argument late on a Sunday night during a birthday party at a club in San Antonio, Texas. The fighting reportedly continued after the couple got home and got physical, but the police didn't know about it until 24 hours later when Brad reported Suzanne missing. One neighbor reported seeing Brad grabbing Suzanne by the torso, while another said they heard screams coming from a nearby wooded area. A witness also said they saw Brad leaving the residence in his pickup truck and returning an hour or 2 later. According to law enforcement, Brad has been uncooperative with the investigation. He was charged with assault causing bodily injury, family violence, and unlawful restraint, but until Suzanne or her remains are found, authorities do not have enough evidence to charge him with anything more serious. Friends and family said that it would be out of character for Suzanne to disappear on her own free will, leaving them fearful that the worst has happened. Number 11. Tom Phillips. A New Zealand father who went on the run with his kids 3 years ago amid a heated custody dispute with their mother was recently photographed with them for the first time since they all went missing. Tom Phillips and his children, Jada, Maverick, and Ember, fled from his residence in rural Maricopa in September 2021, only to reappear 19 days later. He fled again 2 months later, once again with his children in tow. In the only confirmed sighting of Phillips and all 3 kids since their disappearance, they were recorded hiking in some bush just a few miles from where they vanished. In a video, a man could be seen carrying a large backpack while 3 smaller figures, also carrying backpacks, trailed behind him. The footage was captured by teenage pig hunters, one of whom got close enough to ask the group what they were doing. One of the children revealed that the boy filming them was the only person who knew they were in the area, but the family kept walking without disclosing any more information. A subsequent helicopter search failed to turn up any sign of the 4 individuals, whose current whereabouts remain a mystery. Number 10. phony repairman rob man at knife point. A pair of thieves gained entry into a 43-year-old Bronx man's apartment by posing as repairmen, then robbed him at knife point, making off with a safe containing $30,000 of the victim's money. The crooks showed up at the building in the Mott Haven neighborhood in the early afternoon and pretended they were there to fix a leak. With no reason to suspect otherwise, the victim let them inside his apartment. One of the suspects held a knife to the man's neck while the other bound his wrists with duct tape. Using a crowbar, the pair proceeded to force their way into a room where the safe was located. In addition to stealing the 5-figure sum of cash, the thieves made off with the victim's passport and an iPad. They fled on foot and remain at large, according to the most recent available updates on the case. Number 9. El Tiger. Famous Cuban reggaeton singer Jose Manuel Carvajal Zaldivar, better known as El Tiger, was recently shot in the head in Miami. Officers responded to an intersection at 7 a.m. and found a gravely wounded 37-year-old inside a Mercedes SUV. Zaldivar was rushed to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery and was placed on life support. Despite doctors' tireless efforts to save him, he succumbed to his injuries a week after he was shot. The musician's murder remains under investigation and no arrests have been made. Zaldivar's manager, Marcel Reynosa, told CBS Miami that the police have identified a person of interest, but that individual's name is currently being withheld from the public. The person reportedly knows Zaldivar and placed the 911 call that the police were responding to when they found the singer in his vehicle. Reynosa further explained that it was almost certain that Zaldivar was the victim of foul play. Number 8. Serena Rodriguez. 25-year-old aspiring cosmetologist Serena Rodriguez was driving along a highway just outside Los Angeles in the middle of the night when a rock came crashing through her windshield. Emergency responders pronounced her dead at the scene, and investigators concluded that someone had thrown the rock that killed the young woman. They failed to find any suspects during the search of the area, and the killer or killers remain at large. Rodriguez's boyfriend Franco Martinez was in the passenger seat of her car when the deadly incident occurred. He told Fox 11 that it all happened extremely fast and that the rock collapsed Rodriguez's airway immediately after it smashed through the glass. Martinez described his girlfriend as unrecognizable. Nobody has been arrested so far. Number 7. The Menendez Mansion's new owners. Brothers Eric and Lyle Menendez grew up in a privileged but allegedly abusive world, which they claim is what drove them to murder their parents Jose and Mary Louise Kitty Menendez at the family's Beverly Hills mansion in 1980. The pair were convicted of murder and have been languishing in prison for over 30 years while serving life sentences, but they've continued to make news headlines over the years as they challenge their cases in an attempt to regain their freedom. Also in recent news, the Menendez family home has been sold for $17 million to the Iranian-American Lahijani family, who made a large portion of their fortune by investing in Los Angeles real estate. The property changed hands several times after the murders and is currently undergoing extensive renovations. Its connection to the Menendez brothers is also reportedly drawing unwanted attention from true crime fanatics who have been lurking in the neighborhood in hopes of catching a first-hand glimpse of the mansion. In the meantime, Eric and Lyle's attempt to convince the court to release them continues. Number 6. Kirkland Warren. 27-year-old Michelle Melendez and her daughter Layla were found dead in Washington state shortly after they were reported missing in the city of Vancouver. They had both been shot in the head. The passerby who discovered their bodies initially thought he had come across a pair of mannequins, only to realize upon taking a closer look that he had encountered actual human corpses. Investigators linked the murders to Melendez's ex-boyfriend, 28-year-old Kirkland Warren, who was subsequently charged in connection to the victims' deaths. The last person to see the victims prior to the discovery of their remains told police that they had seen Melendez passed out in the passenger seat of Warren's car on the morning of her disappearance. According to police, the witness saw Kirkland carrying Layla out to the car prior to driving away from the scene. The victims were never seen alive again. 8 days before Warren's trial was scheduled to begin, he pleaded guilty to first-degree aggravated murder and second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 5. Brandon Barnes. A South Carolina man is accused of strangling his wife to death at a time when he was sleeping with one of their 2 roommates and secretly raising a child that he fathered with the other. The remains of 20-year-old Jessica Barnes were found after she was reported missing from her Pendleton, South Carolina home. At the time of her disappearance, she and her husband, Brandon, were living with 2 women named Kendall Mims and Victoria Tippett. A baby was born to Brandon and Mims about a year into his relationship with Jessica. Brandon reportedly told Jessica that Mims was his sister and that their baby was his niece, but Jessica discovered the relationship shortly after she moved into the home. She and Brandon married anyway, and she proceeded to befriend the couple's other roommate, Victoria Tippett. But the friendship was short-lived, coming to an abrupt end when Jessica caught Brandon and Tippett being intimate. Jessica vanished the next day. Brandon Barnes is currently facing a murder charge, while Kendall Mims and Victoria Tippett are charged with accessory after the fact, obstruction of justice, and misprision of a felony. Number 4. John ONeal. A 33-year-old tree worker from Colorado named John ONeal was just 15 minutes into his first day on the job when a piece of wood got caught under a court-ordered ankle monitor that he was wearing and dragged him into a wood chipper. He narrowly escaped with his life but lost both of his legs, and his survival was labeled a miracle in news reports. ONeal had just spent some time in rehab and was looking forward to a sober, fresh start when the accident occurred. He later told reporters that he was throwing twigs into the wood chipper when the freak accident happened. Survival mode instantly kicked in, prompting ONeal to hang on for dear life to the side of the wood chipper to prevent the rest of his body from being pulled into the machine. He said he was too concerned with fighting for his life to even feel the pain. As ONeal screamed for help, he realized his co-workers couldn't hear him because they were wearing earplugs. They eventually saw what was happening and sprang into action to rescue him, by which point it was too late to save his legs, which he described as something that looked like what you see in movies. Number 3. Robert Tweedley. On the same day that a 41-year-old high school janitor named Justy Stillwell was reported missing in Bay City, Michigan, a local teenager spotted his severed foot in the Saginaw River. Responding officers also recovered Stillwell's arms and lower legs from the water, and it was evident based on the dismembered state of his remains that he had met with foul play. Surveillance footage and other evidence led to the identification of a 40-year-old suspect named Robert Tweedley. According to police, Tweedley and the victim connected on the Grindr dating app prior to Stillwell's murder, and Tweedley was seen driving away from Stillwell's residence on the day the victim went missing. Tweedley reportedly told detectives that he shoved Stillwell down his basement stairs when Stillwell tried leaving his residence. He then strangled Stillwell to death and cut the victim's body up because it was too heavy to carry upstairs. The accused killer is facing charges of murder and mutilating a body. Number 2. Miguel Iuin. When the body of a 63-year-old truck driver from Los Angeles named Aristide Garcia was found in a ditch along Interstate 65 near Brookston, Indiana, police were quick to turn their attention to his driving partner, 44-year-old Miguel Iuin of Miami, Florida. The discovery was made shortly after Garcia was reported missing by his trucking company, and by then, Iuin was already considered a person of interest following an extensive multi-state investigation involving law enforcement agencies at the federal, state, and local level. Iuin was charged with Garcia's murder. He was found guilty by a jury and is currently awaiting sentencing. Number 1. Travel nurse and diamond minter. Former New York State Governor David Paterson and his 20-year-old stepson, Anthony Chester Silva, were recently gang assaulted outside of a McDonald's restaurant on Manhattan's Upper East Side on a Friday night. The attack unfolded after Paterson and Silva spotted the group climbing a fire escape, and the suspects had reportedly had a previous interaction with Paterson's stepson. The 70-year-old, who is completely blind in one eye and partially blind in another, fought back without hesitation, later stating that he felt it was absolutely necessary to defend himself and Silva. He went on to say that the culprits could rot in hell. Within days of the attack, 3 teenage suspects were apprehended and are currently facing charges in connection with the incident. 2 New York City housing project workers, 40-year-old travel nurse and 34-year-old diamond minter, were apprehended after investigators questioned the young suspects, who were already in custody. They're both facing a second-degree gang assault charge, and nurse is facing an additional count of assault injuring a victim 65 or older.